What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. We hope all is well wherever you are. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy. I want to welcome you into the live show today, Tuesday, August 16th, 2022. The Dallas Cowboys already made their 5 roster cuts. They're down to 85 players on the roster, so no real acts of drama today. Things going to be picking up a little bit as the week continues to unfold. Going to be scrimmaging, the Cowboys are, with the Los Angeles Chargers on Wednesday and Thursday. Then, of course, they've got the preseason game on Saturday night. It is a late affair happening this week. The Cowboys and Chargers kicking off at 9 p.m. Central Time. Yeah, make sure you've got an extra pot of coffee. We will, of course, have our live show following the Cowboys game. We'll discuss stock up, stock down, and everything that happened. So make sure you subscribe here to the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel so you don't miss any of the fun. Today, bit of a kind of simple show in a packed sort of way. We're going to talk backup quarterback because it is an issue for the Dallas Cowboys. And then Connor Livesey, one of our talented staffers at Blogging the Boys, had a 53-man roster prediction that came out actually just a little bit before we started the live show. So if you'd like, you can check that out. We'll put the link in the description down at the bottom if you want to, give it a gander. But let's go ahead and begin. On the subject of backup quarterback, the Cowboys had their final action of any kind in Oxnard, California on Tuesday, and Will Grier is seemingly trending in the right direction. According to the Dallas Morning News, Michael Gehlken looks like he may be able to work on Wednesday and Thursday against the LA Chargers. That's an exciting thing. We certainly want to see him and see the options that we have, because the Cowboys, if we're frank about this, the Cowboys are in a bit of a situation of their own doing, but where the backup quarterback is not one who they can trust in any seriousness, where the backup quarterback is not one that, that inspires any kind of confidence, where the backup quarterback is one, frankly, that is disappointing in a predictable way. Sorry, I had to make sure my iPad wasn't on fire. So if we look at things, Cooper Rush, PFF, we're obviously talking about Cooper Rush, but Pro Football Focus has graded so far through the preseason 82 quarterbacks. All right, it's the preseason, so you're getting a lot of action, a lot of third-string guys getting involved, some teams having 4 quarterbacks even play, although we'll see, different things as the preseason continues to unfold. So Pro Football Focus has graded 82 players to this point, 82 quarterbacks, as far as passing grade is concerned. And you can see it right there. Cooper Rush ranks 77th. 77th out of 82. Now, I recognize that, we're talking about one game here, and that's not a lot of action. That's a very, very small sample size, but the quarterbacks behind him, actually kind of interesting. Desmond Ridder, Zach Wilson, Sam Howell, Matt Corral, and Reed Sinnett, some people pronounce, but not good for Cooper Rush. And one thing I wanted to talk about, and I wrote about this, it hasn't come out yet at Blogging the Boys, but it will, is how the Cowboys have kind of refused to prioritize or pay any real attention to the backup quarterback position. What you're looking at right here on the screen are the backup quarterbacks, or the QB2s as we'll call them, in the Dak Prescott era. I think that's probably the best kind of way to look at it, because we're talking about the way the team has been constructed with him as the starting quarterback. And honestly, in 2016, we have Mark Sanchez listed there, and then obviously you can see the note that some would say Tony Romo. Again, it was a very unique situation, but Dak Prescott was kind of the backup quarterback. The Cowboys were banking on Tony Romo in 2016 returning from injury. He missed 12 games the year prior, and they were banking on everything totally and completely working out. He got hurt, unfortunately. Obviously, that's a very painful chapter in Dallas Cowboys franchise history, and his primary backup got hurt. In fact, Kellen Moore, now the team's offensive coordinator, broke his ankle. That happened first. That elevated then rookie Dak Prescott to primary backup duty, and when Tony Romo got hurt in the preseason, the Cowboys were screwed. And if it weren't for Dak Prescott coming in and saving them, who knows what their team would look like now 6 years later. But you would think that they would have learned that lesson, right? That even though Dak Prescott showed up and played so well in 2016, that in 2017 they would have said, let's get a legitimate backup quarterback in here so we don't have this issue again, so we don't run into a situation where we're not prepared. And so what did they do in 2017? They brought in Cooper Rush, who was an undrafted free agent rookie, and he actually beat out Kellen Moore. That actually kind of propelled Kellen's coaching career, which began a year later. And I don't think they should be totally blamed for that, if I'm being totally fair, because Cooper Rush was awesome in the preseason in 2017, and so fine. But they rested on those laurels, and that's the problem with the Cowboys. That's why we're in this position here with Cooper Rush in this particular moment. 2018, 2019, they trotted him out there. And look, I'm not saying you should spend a first-round pick on QB2, but you have to pay attention to it. Whoever your backup quarterback is so important potentially. Whoever your backup quarterback is somebody who could maybe come in and be the most important player on your team, but the Cowboys treated it with such dismissiveness in 2018, 2019. Jason Garrett's staff comes out, Mike McCarthy's staff comes in, and I said this at the time, I wrote about it, podcasted about it, did videos on it. I loved the Cowboys going after Andy Dalton. I love that archetype, a veteran quarterback who's still somewhat young, who has some starts under their belt, knows a thing or two, has played in the NFL. That was obviously not the case for Cooper Rush. I loved the signing of Andy Dalton. Last year, I wanted the Cowboys to trade for Gardner Minshew. I wanted the Cowboys to sign Mitchell Trubisky. Those are the archetypes that I like when it comes to backup quarterbacks in the NFL. Andy Dalton, I maintain that if he had only been asked to play a game or a month or something like that, that the Cowboys would have been fine, but he was obviously not fit to be the team's quarterback for 9 games, which wound up being the case. And then what did the Cowboys do a year later? They turtled up. They backed off of that philosophy. They backed off of that mentality, and out with Andy Dalton, he wound up in Chicago, and the Cowboys rested on their laurels. What did they do in 2021? They said, you know who's good? This guy, Garrett Gilbert, who almost beat the Pittsburgh Steelers for us in 2020. So because Garrett showed something, he's the best guy. He's the best option. He's the best we can do. We'll bring in Cooper Rush for some sort of competition, and Cooper Rush wound up beating him out. And so, okay, cool. And here we are again, fast forward to the present. Cooper Rush last year goes to Minnesota, beats the Vikings, and while I'm so happy the Cowboys beat the Vikings, and I think you are too, I don't know any Cowboys fan who wishes that game had gone a different way, but that game is kind of the reason why Cooper Rush is being given so much deference at the backup quarterback position. If Cooper Rush had not won that game, I mean, that bought him a lot of time. That bought him a lot of leeway, rightfully so in some situations, in some cases. But, I mean, you cannot just say, well, he beat the Vikings last year, so he must be good. No! I mean, the Vikings were a terrible team in so many facets, which is disappointing because they have so much offensive talent. But you cannot just say, oh, you know what? Well, Cooper Rush beat the Vikings, so we're good. We don't have to do anything. No. You constantly have to learn. You constantly have to grow. You constantly have to adapt. We are at the point as Dallas Cowboys fans where we legitimately believe, and I don't think this is unfair, that Will Grier, who we've never seen play any sort of game of any kind for the Dallas Cowboys and is currently coming off of a groin injury, is a better option than Cooper Rush. We're that desperate, and you cannot treat such a potentially important position in such a cavalier way. That is my gripe. That is how I feel. So that is that. That is the Cooper Rush discussion. Best of luck to him, though. You know, it's an important week, obviously scrimmaging with the LA Chargers. I mean, look, think about it. Cooper Rush was the worst quarterback on a team that featured Ben DiNucci. That happened. That's crazy when you really think about it that way. But that's just how it goes sometimes. But let's get to it. Connor Livesey, one of our talented staffers, as mentioned over at Blogging the Boys, wrote a 53-man roster prediction. It came out just before we started this live show. Obviously, if you're with us live, we love you. If you're not, we still love you. You know, but it hurts our feelings a little bit that you didn't make time for us, whatever. But you can obviously catch the rewatch whenever you want on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. Let's get to it. You can read Connor's prediction. He has analysis for every position group underneath it if you want to get his take on things at bloggingtheboys.com. But we'll start with the quarterback position. Connor has 2 quarterbacks on his 53-man roster. It should come as no surprise that Dak Prescott is obviously QB1 and that Will Grier is QB2. I don't think any of us see a way or a path towards Cooper Rush making this roster. He had an amazing opportunity last week with Will Grier injured and with Will Grier not there to really kind of take a leap and put some distance between him and Grier, and he didn't do it. In fact, he only narrowed that gap, as we've kind of mentioned and joked about several different times. So I think that's fair. I think that's fine. I don't have an issue with it. Let's move on. Running back, 3 players on the Dallas Cowboys 53-man roster in this particular assessment. Zeke Elliott, Tony Pollard. Again, that's very chalk. Rico Dowdle. I know Malik Davis is a favorite of many. You can certainly make an argument, for him and having a spot on the roster. And so we'll kind of see it. A lot of this depends on how deep the Cowboys want to go at certain positions, but it's hard to imagine them carrying 3 running backs, to be frank. But I don't know how you turn down Rico Dowdle. But they've carried 2 in the past in the Zeke era, and so I mean, I love Rico Dowdle, but if we're right now, if there's a dude who I want to see get more carries, it's Tony Pollard. Let's make sure that happens, and then we can distribute the ball as many different ways as we want. So that's 2 positions. Let's move on. Wide receiver. 6 players here who Connor has on his 53-man roster. You can see the second names there at the 4th and 5th spot in italics. Those are allowing for some roster magic to happen. So if you do not know, the Cowboys in all likelihood will place Michael Gallup and/or James Washington on injured reserve or leave Michael Gallup on the PUP list. We'll see how they tend to, or how they ultimately will handle those specific injury designations. But to be able to do those things, they have to carry them initially on the 53-man roster. If they don't, then they are not able to bring Michael Gallup back at any point this season. And so that would be unfortunate. So this is just kind of the roster mechanics, the roster loopholes, the roster jump rope that you have to go through. So the 6 receivers initially being carried for the Cowboys: CeeDee Lamb, Noah Brown, Jalen Tolbert, Michael Gallup, James Washington, and Simi Fehoko. No TJ Vasher, and as you can see again, Connor has Dennis Houston and Kevontae Turpin coming back. So those would be initial roster cuts, players who the Cowboys initially do move on from, but just temporarily, and then as soon as they gave the appropriate designations to both Gallup and Washington, they would bring back both Turpin and Houston. Houston, obviously, the player who's making it here over TJ Vasher. We've been talking a lot about that, how Vasher started off very strong at camp, had the mossing of Kelvin Joseph, but ever since then, it's kind of been the Dennis Houston show. And I think this is fair. Honestly, I think this is, difficult to find any real massive level of disagreement with. So 6 receivers feels about chalk. Again, it is kind of 8 if you cheat a little bit, but there you go. Cowboys have receivers that we're kind of set on. It's funny. I mean, there are a lot of places to focus on when it comes to the Cowboys roster in terms of things we disagree with and things we don't like. We've just kind of put a bookmark in receiver. Like, we're still upset. We still need some bodies here, but we just put a bookmark in it to kind of, talk about the tackle situation, the QB2 situation. So we'll obviously have to revisit that as the weeks unfold. Tight end, very simple, very straight up. Dalton Schultz, Sean McEwen, Jake Ferguson. Peyton Hendershot, I think, is the name to watch here. Connor doesn't have him on his 53-man roster. It does kind of seem like Jeremy Sprinkle's starting to become the odd man out, can't even, master the blocking, which is supposed to be his thing. Jake Ferguson's the rookie, obviously. Peyton Hendershot, again, in situations where things are even for NFL teams, they ultimately tend to prioritize youth and prioritize years of roster control. And the Cowboys have that when it comes to Jake Ferguson and Peyton Hendershot. And so I don't see them moving on from either one of them is the point. If they do move on from Peyton Hendershot, maybe he's a practice squad candidate. But I don't think that Jeremy Sprinkle's making this 53-man roster, but that's just me. Let's move on to the offensive line. Let's get that off there so we don't mess up that last line. This is maybe where there's the highest level of trepidation at the moment, as mentioned with the tackle situation. So obviously you've got your starters: Tyron Smith, Tyler Biadasz, Zach Martin, Terrence Steele. Connor McGovern is your alternate guard right now. Obviously, although the Cowboys would argue he's your contending left guard, I don't know how that makes sense, but that's how they want to roll right now. Josh Ball is your swing tackle right now. I know there's a lot of Cowboys fans displeased with him, but like we talked about on Monday, you cannot move on from him right now. If you move on from Josh Ball, you literally do not have another tackle. You don't. There's literally no. I mean, you have a Deontay Collins that is technically an option. And as you can see, Connor's given him that same distinction. An initial roster cut brought back after the Cowboys apply an injury designation to Matt Waletzko, who we haven't heard from, obviously, because he's hurt. He got hurt at the very beginning of camp, and which means that the Cowboys are. Think about it. Today is August 16th. The season starts on September 11th. The only reserve tackle option, the only legitimate reserve tackle option on the Dallas Cowboys roster is Josh Ball, who had a horrible game last week against the Denver Broncos. This is such an important couple of practices coming up for him against the LA Chargers. But as much as I disagree with the team's logic behind it, I get Connor's logic. I get why he's picked these players. I get why this is his list. I get why these are his group, his 9, his 10, if you want to count the trickery there happening with Collins. So that's the O-line. Let's move to the other side of the ball. Along the defensive line, lots of bodies. 11 defensive linemen is an enormous amount to carry, but it's hard. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to get rid of any of these names right here. DeMarcus Lawrence, Dorrance Armstrong, Dante Fowler, Sam Williams, Terrell Basham. I mean, that's name one of those ends that you don't want to carry. You can't. I mean, I think a lot of people have kind of debated or discussed, maybe pontificated, that maybe the Cowboys would move on from one of the veterans in Dante Fowler or Terrell Basham. And you can certainly make that argument from the perspective that you're the Dallas Cowboys and you have Micah Parsons and Anthony Barr both to rush the passer. I'm fighting off a sneeze, goodness gracious. But still, I mean, these are good players who can help you out, players who can help Dan Quinn's defense. So I understand not wanting to move on from them. Along the interior, again, it's difficult. Neville Gallimore, Osa Odighizuwa, Chauncey Golston's been getting work inside. Tristan Hill, that might be the one. Carlos Watkins and John Ridgeway, the rookie. There have been thoughts or, again, pontifications, and maybe the Cowboys could look to trade Tristan Hill. I don't know that there's a massive market for him right now. I know that people would say, well, I'd rather trade him than cut him. I'd rather get something than nothing. And that makes sense. But I think that if you have to kick one of these names off, if you do want to carry a Peyton Hendershot or something somewhere else, I think that the most likely nominees come from this group, from the defensive line, and it's probably one of the veteran ends in Dante Fowler or Terrell Basham or Tristan Hill. That's just what makes the most sense to me. Let's move to the linebacker core. Again, this is Connor Livesey's 53-man roster prediction that you can read at bloggingtheboys.com. Micah Parsons, Leighton Vander Esch, Anthony Barr, Jabril Cox, Devin Harper, and Malik Jefferson. Malik was a bit of a surprise I saw already in the comment section over at Blogging the Boys. I get it, and especially that kind of lends to the idea if you need bodies, right? And by the way, Luke Gifford absent from this list, but if you need bodies, if you're going to rely on Micah or Anthony Barr to rush the passer more, if you just want to have more straight up conventional classic linebackers, then maybe you do go a little bit longer there to give yourself some more room to work, because you do have those hybrid players in Micah and Anthony. But that one's a little bit interesting too. Maybe it wouldn't have been on my 53-man roster prediction, but that's what's fun about this time of year is there's so many different ways that you can put this puzzle together. So it's always interesting to see how different people approach the exercise. Corners, 5 corners, and this is interesting. I don't know exactly what Connor's thinking was here. In fact, let me pull it up, because you'll notice there is one name not on here. So 5 cornerbacks for Connor Livesey on his 53-man roster prediction at bloggingtheboys.com. Trayvon Diggs, Anthony Brown, Jordan Lewis, Deron Bland, and Nahshon Wright. You will note that there is one player absent again, and it is a second-round pick in Kelvin Joseph. I have Connor's article up on a different tab here, so I'll read to you what he wrote. I don't want to discourage you from reading the whole article. You should. But this is what he wrote about the cornerback position. While in most cases moving on from a second-round pick after 1 year admits a big mistake, most cases don't involve Kelvin Joseph, who was involved in an off-season murder investigation. They started off camp and preseason on a very rough note, and the whispers of the lack of work ethic have seemed to get louder. While Nahshon Wright also has had a disappointing showing in week 1 of the preseason, Wright has been the better practice player so far in camp. It would be a surprise to see Kelvin Joseph cut, but it's something that shouldn't be totally ruled out. This is one of the bigger surprises in the 53-man roster prediction, talking about his own prediction, but don't rule it out unless Joseph really turns it around. We generally kind of tend to believe that draft stock and contracts and things like that are indicative of the way teams perceive and value different players. And so, yeah, it's hard to envision the Cowboys moving on from a second-round pick just before his second season in the NFL truly gets off the ground. But the grounds are certainly there to move on from Kelvin Joseph. He hasn't played well. There's really no pro right now working for him. It'd be a bit of a bold move, certainly, and it would be the second year in a row that the Cowboys moved on from a fairly recent second-round pick. It was not this time of year, but it was early in the season last year when Dallas cut linebacker Jalen Smith. Very different situation, talking just about the football here. That was a little bit shocking, especially that they'd not only made Jalen a second-round pick, but they'd given him a second contract. And so I don't think it's impossible. I get that it's a little bit bold, but I don't think it's impossible. At safety, I don't know why I cut the top off here, the headline here, but Connor has 5 safeties on the team nonetheless. Jaron Kearse, Malik Hooker, Donovan Wilson, Israel Mukuamu making it in his second season, and Marquise Bell, who feels very safe as an undrafted free agent, to make this roster. So that seems pretty chalk in and of itself. And then finally, at specialist, obviously you've got your 3, punter Brian Anger. Connor has gone with Lareem Hairulahu at kicker over Brett Maher. I don't know that anybody's pumped about either way that could shake out. And long snapper Jake McQueen McQuaid. I do think it's worth mentioning when it comes to Jake McQuaid. I saw this in David Hellman's 53-man roster prediction at Fox Sports. The Cowboys will very likely cheat a little bit when it comes to their initial 53-man roster. They will very likely they'll very likely cut McQuaid knowing he's protected and then bring him back so that they can carry a Michael Gallup, they can carry a James Washington, they can carry a Matt Waletzko and give them the appropriate injury designations. Again, it's about, it's trying to fit a big block of furniture through a specific doorway, through a specific alley, and you have to go one way or else it's not going to fit. Sometimes that's what it's like putting together a 53-man roster. But make sure you check out Connor's prediction at bloggingtheboys.com. You can follow me. My name is RJ Ochoa on Twitter or Instagram at RJ Ochoa, on TikTok at RJ.Ochoa. If you'd like, you can send me an email at rj.ochoa@sbnation.com, or you can leave a comment down below and we'll get to those. Also, Cowboys joint practices with the LA Chargers on Wednesday and Thursday. We'll have you covered, of course, here on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you next time.